Well, hello, that's me again. Today is the 27th of December 2023. We are only 4 days away from the new year. And, I hope you had a great Christmas, guys. And let's get to our goat, so to speak, immediately. And for those people who still continue to whine, and, here it is. New York Times report that Ukraine hits major Russian warship but loses ground in the east. A major military success at sea against Russian Black Sea Fleet was tempered by Ukraine's acknowledgement that it had all but retreated from the city of Mariinka. Well, it didn't retreat, it was beaten out of it, and again, their ship which they burned is actually Novocherkassk. It is an old ship. In 2027 it would have been 40 years old, and it wasn't in combat duty, it was just simply parked moored at one of the piers of the Feodosia ports. So, but why did they need this? Why did they need to do something about it? Well, New York Times already explains it to you. The loss of Mariinka, and not to speak about the mountains of the corpses of the armed forces of Ukraine personnel, that pretty much explains to you the pattern which repeats itself over and over again. Each time armed forces of Ukraine lose major tactical battle, and guess what? They need to do something. It is the same as New York Times reported, if you remember, about the Su-34th. And, well, guess what? Obviously, those three allegedly Su-34s, which allegedly have been shot down, turned out to be nothing more than baloney. Nothing of like happened, so they needed to shoot at their, basically, a ship which was in the repairs, was immobile, and represented not any important combat value. It is an old ship which was built actually at that time in the Polish People's Republic. It was the Warsaw Pact ship. So, but it is what it is. Nothing we can do about it, and we have to go on and see through the BS and propaganda. And I have to explain something for people who are, and I already wrote today about this in my blog, that you get a lot of so-called concerned citizens, which are bots, and all kinds of the trolls, appearing here and there on all kinds of discussion boards, and they are financed either by the from London, Washington, or maybe of them CIPSO. And the reason they do that is because obviously they need to constantly cover up, including for the public opinion in the West, which the only one which matters for them, basically that it's over for Ukraine. We know that, and the new wave of mobilization is just, or basically attempts at new wave of mobilization, including deportation of the Ukrainian refugees back to Ukraine, tells you everything you need to know. But let's get and explain to you how this all could have happened in terms of the attack. Here, where the attack originated. It originated in the Zhovtin airfield around there. A couple of Su-24 of Ukrainian Air Force launched from there. And this was Storm Shadows. Obviously, it was NATO, primarily British and American ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance assets, which provided the targeting. And targeting for this mission is very simple. It's basically geographic coordinates of the ship, which have been moored there for a long time. So they launched Storm Shadows, try to escape. They are shot down, but they reach Feodosia and burn this ship. So, well, it happens. Now, but here is the very important thing which we need to also keep in mind, because I went out there and translated, it's machine translation of the yesterday interview with the General Polko. And General Polko, let me put it this way, I know about this general a few years back when he was giving the interview to another Polish outlet, and he stated that one of the reasons of their Grom special operations, regiment of Polish armed forces is better than anything like Russian Spetsnaz because they know how to, observe human rights. Basically, when I basically lifted my jaw from the floor reading this, I thought it was the combat capabilities of the unit, but hey, whatever, this is Polish general. Yet even this, just nut job, he had to go out and stated that Ukraine has a chance to win this war. If Putin succeeds, it will just go further. You mean Russia. It's typical Polish paranoia and military incompetence, but I have to tell you that even this General Polko explains to you what actually New York Times explained to you, and here it is. As he says that there was really not a counteroffensive. I agree with him actually here. It was an offensive. The reason for sticking to this front in place are many. First of all, there was no counteroffensive because the Ukrainians did not decide to operate some operational association, several brigades together in the single direction. He tries to say that, they needed to create this, feast, and try to break through. Typical baloney which they study in the NATO military schools. But here he gets very interesting point. In fact, instead of looking for success on the front, they were looking for propaganda success, hoping for some easy success, dispelling their forces in different directions. The second question is the hardware and command mosaic. And here he is also correct. If Ukrainians are trained in the West, they are trained by Germans, the French, the Americans. And everyone does it differently. Well, it's not quite like that. The equipment that is delivered is in single pieces, and that this certainly makes it difficult to achieve synergy. Remarkably, this dude, who is obviously wouldn't be allowed to command any kind of serious formation in Russian army, he is correct here, and he nails it precisely. It was always about PR. On the American part, what he forgets to say, that these were NATO staffs, not Ukrainian general staff. They are a bunch of morons there. They know something, but all plans for this counteroffensive have been developed in Washington, in London, and of course then, basically discussed at the Ramstein Air Base and played out in the game, war games in Germany. This is what it has been done. And now they're trying to basically avoid any kind of the responsibility for what have been a catastrophic failure which Russians anticipated. They knew they're not good. They knew those Pentagon operational offices are not that good. They knew that London doesn't even have serious army. Yet those guys, they still pretend that they matter. They don't. They don't know nothing. They have one combat-capable brigade, which probably gonna last against serious force for a couple, 3 days. Then it will be obliterated. These are the type of the people who are preparing this and who planning this. And here's this General Polka merely confirms, however, with producing some of the valid points, including that it was always about PR. The same as they tried to, just came up with this PR about those allegedly Su-34s, which never have been shut down. But what can I say, And here comes this very important thing which I needed to really discuss with you. And people usually do their how they call it, their results of the year, the summary of the year. They go out, make those forecasts, prognosis. As you know, I don't do forecasts. I give the framework, and people decide on their, on their own what is happening. And so here, what we here have to discuss a little bit, because it is very important. Look at this. RT reports yesterday that Mr. Manturov, the guy who is in charge of Russian industry, he details that, there is an active hunt on the details of Moscow modernized weapon systems, the country top trade official says. Russia's main state security agency announced last week that its agents detained a Russian national who was tasked by a Ukrainian terrorist organization to assassinate a defense industry manager in the central part of the country. Also, Western countries are attempting to steal Moscow's military technology. It is absolutely normal. Everybody spies on each other. But at this stage, we need to keep in mind what Mr. Chemezov, the chief of the Russian giant Rostec, which is responsible for the production of the most of Russian military technology, stated today. You can go out and look it up, and you can look it up at the RIA News, for example, where his interview and statements are broken in several segments when he stated about that all this technological advantage of the West is a myth, which I wrote 3 books on that, but it is all mythology. There's nothing real there about it, the same as what Larry Johnson yesterday wrote an excellent piece and Scott Ritter was talking about. Idea of this whole idea of mythology is myth. Yeah, it's just mythology. It's not as good as a force which is capable to fight serious war, especially as it commits basically war crimes on the massive scale in Gaza. And so the same applies to the NATO militaries headed by the United States. And now they want to find out any access towards such things as, let's talk about this a little bit. And because it is the end of the year, Sputnik Globe, and they did an excellent, fun poll, so to speak. As you can see yourself, Sputnik International yesterday, they did their, yesterday or 2 days ago, well, basically really recently, they talked about what everybody, fanboys love about this, military porn and things like that. And hey, nothing wrong with this. I understand people like to, see those big bada booms, and all things flying and exploding. But look at this. Top 5 powerful Russian weapons that shattered myth of NATO superiority in 2023. Well, I can give you not just top 5, probably top 50, but hey, let's go for the top 5 and look at this, what Sputnik did, which is really great. Sputnik asked 5 leading Russian and US military experts for their takes on the top 5 Russian weapons of the outgoing year. And guess what? This time they asked real people, real experts. For example, on the American side, incomparable Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski and Mr. Maloof, and I'll talk about it on the Russian side, all former cadre senior officers of Russian armed forces. And look what they talk about. Michael Maloof, a former senior security policy analyst from the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Defense, lists Russia's hypersonic capabilities in general and the Kinzhal in particular as the most significant Russian arms of 2023. Well, he's absolutely correct, and again, the Kinzhal flies at Mach 10. It's got a 2,000-kilometer range and could be launched from bombers and interceptors, Maloof told Sputnik. 4 of them were thrown at the Ukrainians recently along with other drones and what have you. Not one of those Kinzhals was even noticed or hit or intercepted, he recalled. But, as you know, Ukrainians said that together with all those multiple Su-34s and all kinds of things, they shut down all those Kinzhals, right? Well, no. And here is the guy who knows a little bit about this. And here what he says, and that's what is most important. The United States has no defense against hypersonic missiles, but is working on it, which is true, it is. Maloof emphasized, many systems have failed. The United States has not yet achieved development of its own hypersonic systems. It's trying. This makes any missile defense systems that either the United States or Europe have penetrable and obsolete, especially if any of these missiles, hypersonics, are launched in a swarm approach that is multiple missiles at once. There is absolutely no defense, and you can have the most elaborate anti-ballistic missile system in the world, but because of the maneuverability and approach in how they are launched, it makes it impossible to defeat hypersonics. And if all of them are deployed at once in a swarm approach, and if armed with nukes, and many of them are capable of being armed with nuclear weapons, it would be devastating. Maloof also pointed out that Russia only resumed work on hypersonic program after the United States decided to quit the anti-ballistic missile treaty in 2002, effectively bringing this problem on itself in effect. Many times I have to repeat, and many people continue to repeat, not me alone, from even American side and especially from Russian side. You cannot communicate with people from Washington establishment because they are being uncultured and many of them sociopaths. They think that when you try to reason with people, you expose your weakness. In this particular case, you look at the modern, for example, Biden administration, and neocons, most of them are either Likudniks, which means it is certifying nut jobs, or they are sociopaths who are also illiterate. Militarily, they are utterly illiterate, as is primarily people who planned counteroffensive, so-called counteroffensive. And now what do we have? Mr. Shoigu basically verbalized the number of 160,000 casualties, but again, as I already stated, we are yet to learn about actual numbers of KIAs. It will be earth-shaking and it will be a shock. This I can forecast, and you can quote me on that. Now, and if that hasn't been enough, of course, those people who gave their interview to Sputnik and named all those things, you have to remember also that I want to remind you, Mr. Gasimov, I did it in my last video, that Mr. Gasimov, I get you back to his statements, look what he stated. And this is a really good way of assess some effectiveness. Look at this. According to Gasimov, in just a year, 6,300 air targets of the armed forces of Ukraine were hit, including 90 harm anti-radar missiles, as well as 30 missiles of .U and so on, and MLRS and things of this nature. But here what we have today, as I already stated, that can give us some insight into the situation. Look what is the report on Russia's military production. Russian troops received more than 20 million rounds of ammunition in 2023 alone. Military-industrial complex of the United States and all NATO countries combined are whipping now. They will not be able to do actually 1/40th of that. If they can reach 500,000 a year, good luck with that. And Russians actually continue to increase military production. And that is why you see what you see on the front lines happening as we speak. In addition, they say, 250 aircraft and helicopters, 57 surface ships, 617,000 units of portable weapons and equipment were delivered to the troops. And here it comes. More than 7,200 anti-aircraft guided missiles were delivered for air defense systems this year. Think about it. 7,200. And if you want to understand the scale of it, I will suggest you guys to go even to Wikipedia, because Wikipedia gives you the not hyperlink reference to from where this data is taken, and look out of all those missiles combined produced for Patriot, all versions of those complexes, for Aegis guided, missiles of the SM-2 and SM-6 type, and for the RIM, those rotating airframe evolved Sparrow. When you put it together, starting from many of those missiles being produced since 1967, you will get probably at the most 20,000 throughout what? We're looking at how many? 50 years? So, well, Russia in 1 year produced those missiles, and those are modern, highly complicated, highly sophisticated missiles, 7,600 of them. 7,600 in 1 year. This is what people in Pentagon, CIA, and now they are facing and looking, into face of their. I mean, they just never thought about it. They never knew it. I warned about it for 10 years. I wrote 3 books. I'm writing the 4th one. I'm nearing half of it now, almost. Oh, thank God. So you do not want to screw with people like Russians. I wrote about it. When you have the mythology instead of the military science, when you have no military art, you have only just weak opponents to beat upon, and even there you lose. So what do you expect? What do you expect when you do not study real strategy? When your strategy is based on the amount of resources you can master and command towards the political goals of the war. Those people don't understand that. Take any neocon. Take any guy from like U.S. Army War College who is a neocon. He will be still believing that, General Patton is a great general. He was not. But that's what they do. And then suddenly they look at this. And by the way, so if you now basically put together this thing about 7,600 air defense missiles produced in a year, do not forget there were many before which hasn't been produced either. So, and not all of them have been used, but 6,300 aerial targets have been shot down by air defense forces. Well, think yourself, what are we looking at? And these numbers are terrifying. They never saw anything like this. And this just goes way beyond what Mr. Kavoli was stating, that is scale, scale, scale. It's not just scale. It's the effectiveness which is beyond basically any grasp of any Western military, be that separate or combined. And that's what has to be stated. But this is not it. We have to go and look also that Mr. Slusari states. Mr. Slusari, of course, of the chief big honcho of the United Aircraft Corporation, the corporation which produces Russia's combat and commercial aircraft. And look at this. He said that the state order for the 5th generation Su-57 fighter doubled in 2023. And for 2024, the order is even more. So, no, it's not going to be 72 fighters Su-57 by 2028. I believe they were planning this. It's going to be many, many more. And just today, they confirmed that yet another batch of the basically Su-57s have been delivered. It is all over the news, so I don't need to translate it to you. Just, quote me on this if you want to. But go to any Russian major media source, they will tell you about it. And that's what he says, that about the Su-57 basically doubled. And he describes a little bit of the capabilities of the Su-57, including basically that it can function as a pilot, including the preparation of the launch and launching of the weapons on board. And so when you look at this, like, yeah, you have to think really hard, about what is happening and what you have to keep in mind when we discuss special military operation. And that is why, for example, some of Russian news media today, they write very funny articles, which I agree with. But for example, they say that Russians have to, just safeguard Mr. Zelensky as much as possible, because he is the guy who refuses to negotiate or anything. Good, because that allows Russia the diplomatic cover to continue to do what it does. But so they now want to deport, as I already stated, the personnel for another cannon fodder. And there are so many videos of those people, basically, especially the military commissariats in Ukraine, even breaking into the in the night into the resorts where people rest, and just getting all these semi-naked wives and men into the corridors, and then just basically grabbing them and throwing them into the vans, and just getting them to the front line where they will die. So there you go. This is what you need to know about the situation with Ukraine, with their defense, as they say now, and especially after the loss of Mariinka. And of course, Russians now openly in the open, including, for example, like Maria Zakharova when discussing the provocation in Bucha false flag, which was organized by London, MI6, and CIA. And basically, you know that all those American British officers, they are there not only attack Russian military targets, they also help to attack civilian targets. And that brings us to this. You know, the Responsible Statecraft or Quincy Institute, which is run by Andrew Bacevich and exists on the or Mr. Soros and Koch subsidies, so to speak, they help them. They talk about will the human rights movement survive the Gaza war? This is the stupidest article I read in a while, especially when you listen to this Kenneth Roth, the former executive director of the Human Rights Watch. It's not, will not survive. It is already dead, and they have been dead for a while, especially when you consider the fact that obviously the war crimes committed on the massive scale, essentially perpetrated genocide by Israel. And then, of course, you know, as they write here, you know, and the guy who ran this organization into the ground because they never really reacted on the human rights violations by the Ukraine against the Russian and Slavic population of Eastern Ukraine, what used to be Eastern Ukraine, and Russians. So, but here it is. Here they go onto this, you know, lengths and talk about it. Probably requires a certain psychological analysis to figure out why, but some of the signals being sent from the top indicated willingness to disregard the requirements of humanitarian law, which, by the way, he admits was written by militaries, by international leading militaries. This was drafted by the world's leading militaries. Well, guess what? I mean, if you look attentively at the American political elite, or you look at the Israeli political elite, of course, Likudniks, or you look at the West political elite, those people have no principles, and many of them, as I already stated, they are qualify really well, especially corporate media, as the war criminals who violated every single protocol on the human rights. Well, guess what? So when I read articles like that, if it will survive, it will not survive. It's already has been dead for a while. And whoever this guy, whatever his name is, who was the, you know, big honcho for this, you know, human rights organization, he can congratulate himself of driving his organization with its double standards and being a prostitute for all kinds of the political pressures from, let's say, United States or NATO, that it means nothing. It's over. It is over in general because the new paradigm is happening right now. We live in a paradigm, historical paradigm shift times, and that is why when I read those articles, I laugh. Guys, find something more important to write about than this garbage of the pretense that really human rights matter. They have to ask absolutely Gaza children, but before they ask Gaza children, they have to ask Donbass children who have been killed by Ukrainian army, and those guys from CIA, if those guys from MI6 who were doing all those false flags and killing Russian civilians. There you go. That should be the issue of the human rights, and it will be brought up, as I already stated, when we talk about the basically tribunal of the war crimes on Ukraine. And in conclusion, though, you know, just to demonstrate to you what those people are, yesterday I go in and I stumble on that. Well, guess what it is? It is ABC News, but look what type of the headline they stick in front of us for the YouTube. U.S. launches retaliatory strike in Iran. And what I love about Americans now, unlike it is with Europeans, You even under here, you can see so many Americans writing this. No, this was not the typo. This was deliberate clickbait, and this was the wet dream they were trying to, operate on behalf of those IPAC and people who control America's foreign policy in favor of Israel. Because this is Freudian sleep. It is a Freudian typo. They dream about Iran. But of course, it actually, US never launched anything against Iran. It launched against Iran interest in Iraq after United States bases have been, under attack, and there were some wounded there. So, but look at this. This is really funny how they dream about. But no, the United States will not go and fight Iran because it will be absolutely defeated and will sustain catastrophic defeat. So, but this is what I wanted to tell you today, guys, about this whole situation. And, as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel and support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee on too. And so I plan to do indeed some kind of the results of the 2023 maybe in a couple of days before the new year. But if something doesn't work out, what can I say? Just in case, Happy New Year. I hope so. It will be better. But do not forget, we live in a very interesting times. And you know what? As the Chinese condemnation is, let God allow you to live during interesting times. And boy, do we live in them. So this is it for today, guys. Have the nice rest of the week for yourself, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.